At a small airport, a security officer twists open a man's urn at the checkpoint, spilling ashes across the belt. A gate agent breaks policy to gather the remains and shepherd the man through a private screening, risking suspension and a hit to on-time stats. Quiet changes follow as small tools and signs appear, and the gate agent carries a simple brush as a reminder of dignity returned. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And hey, where are you tuning in from? Leave your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories reach. The grey bin jerked on the belt. The ceramic cylinder rolled, and a gloved hand caught it by the lid. He twisted. The lid gave with a pop. A pale cloud lifted soft as dust from a chalkboard and settled across the rubber belt and the officer's sleeve. People in socks took a step back. The older man on the other side of the table said, "Very small, no please," as the grey sifted into the grooves. "Powder over 12 ounces has to be screened," the security officer said. He angled the open mouth toward the light, squinting down. He wasn't cruel. He was harried, eyes red at the edges, radio hissing at his shoulder. He tipped the container, and a thread of ash slid toward the metal lip of the table. The man flinched like it hurt. "Please," the man said, reaching. His hand hovered over the spill, fingers trembling. The officer put up a palm. "Sir, don't touch. We need to test the contents." The belt clacked on under the bins, carrying someone's shoes through a drift of what shouldn't have been on a floor. Mara looked up from the scanner. Her table was 6 feet away, near the stanchion cord. She had been boarding Group 2 for B12. Head down, the little green check marks blinking by. She saw the grey on the rubber, the officer fumbling the man's open mouth. She heard the hush in the line and the quiet clicks of phones being unpocketed. Numbers lived in her head. On-time departures, load factors, the monthly email with the heat map of delays. She also knew the rule from orientation. Don't interfere with the checkpoint. Her badge would get scanned into an incident report. Interfering meant a write-up, maybe the last one. She had a final warning folded like a napkin in her locker. Disrupted departure protocol. Language softened, meaning hard. One more, and she wasn't just off the leadership track. She was out, and if she held B12, they'd fall below the 90% on time for the quarter. The station manager would look straight through her next morning and ask if she was trying to make a point. She knew better than to step under the rope. She told herself that the refrain from training videos, while the old man's knees went down to the tile. His suit pants were sharp-creased, and now the knee took a wet mark where someone had dripped water. He put his palm down and lifted it, not catching anything, just making the ash into a grey smear. The officer said, "Sir, please." She ducked under the stanchion cord. Someone in line said, "Hey," but mostly they just watched. Mara held her badge out as she moved. "Hold B12, she said into her radio. Passenger assist." The words felt like a lie she hadn't planned yet. She grabbed a waxed paper water cup from the stack by the fountain. She took two, because the first bent too easily. She knelt, bare knee on the tile, and the cold hit through her slacks. The officer angled toward her. "Ma'am, you can't. Get your lead," she said, not looking up. "And stop the belt. You can't be here," the officer said. His hands hovered, gloved, unsure. "Ma'am." His voice wasn't hard. He sounded tired. He looked young, up close. Mara slid the rim of the cup along the belt, gathering the fine layer, coaxing it up like flour with a stiff card. She grabbed a blank baggage tag off the printer and used the stiff paper like a little shovel. The tag picked up more than the cup. She breathed slow. She didn't think about what she was scraping. She thought about not losing it to the air moving through the vent under the table. Her radio crackled in her ear. "Why is B12 held?" her manager's voice said. "Mara, answer. Passenger assist," she said again. Low. She felt the weight of every second on the clock. Behind her, boarding stalled, a knot of people in patterned socks and rolled-up sleeves stared over the rope. The officer reached for the urn. "Ma'am, I need to test a sample. We have to make sure—" "Test the bag," she said, keeping her hand steady. "Not this." She glanced up at him. The man who had been holding the urn was on his knees, both hands pressed uselessly on the cold tile now, like he could stop the ground from taking anything else. The officer sighed and hit a red switch under the table. The belt stopped with a clunk. He keyed his radio. "Supervisor to lane 2, he said. He kept looking at Mara, like she was a problem he hadn't been trained for. "Are we going to miss our flight?" a woman in a grey blazer asked, voice cutting through the murmurs. Someone else said, unreal. Every time. A pair of teenagers in hoodies had their phones out. One zoomed in maybe on the half-circle of ash where Mara's hands were. Her manager strode over, jaw tight. Not your remit, he said to Mara, not loud, but in that tone. Let them handle it. You come back to the podium now. Mara didn't stand. I've got him, she said. She got the edge of the ash into the cup. Her hand shook once. She made it stop. You're off the rest of the day, her manager said. Turn in your tablet after this. He didn't say anything else. He looked at the old man and then at the officer and then away, as if a long time ago he might have done what she was doing and learned better. The officer's lead arrived. He had grey in his hair and a tiny microwave burrito smell. He took in the belt, the cup, the open urn, the man on his knees. He crouched a little so he wasn't towering over anyone. We can do a private screening, he said to the man. Sir, I'm sorry. That's an option. Do you want that? The man nodded, eyes on the cup in Mara's hand. He had a ring on a chain around his neck, under his open collar, the chain thin and steel. Mara handed the cup to the lead like it weighed something that would hurt if it tipped. They moved to a side room thin door, glass panel, fluorescent light that hummed. The lead brought a clear bag, a test swab, the little machine with a blue screen. He stopped asking for permission out loud. He just waited, palms up. He didn't touch the urn again. Mara tore a strip of tape from a roll she kept in her bag for baby strollers and lap cards. The tape was dull blue and had lint on it. She sealed the lid back on with 3 strips, pressed smooth with the pad of her thumb. She handed the man a wipe for his palms, held the little trash bag open as he used it. Coffee, she asked, like it was normal to ask it in a room like that. He nodded. She went and came back with a paper cup that burned her fingers through the thin wall. She added 2 creams and a sugar without asking questions. Her tablet buzzed inside her blazer. She didn't take it out. In the family room by gate B10, it was quieter. The carpet was dark and forgiving. A tiny plane pin sat in the corner of the couch, probably dropped by a kid. She set the coffee down and a stack of napkins. She washed the ash off the man's cuffs with a damp paper towel, wiping carefully so she didn't move fabric against skin. He didn't talk for a minute. He held the urn like a baby, the blue tape neat, the seam covered. He had a mole on his wrist and it flashed every time his hand shifted. He stared at the taped lid, not like it was fixed now, but like it was less open. Our flight is going to San Diego, she said, because the silence was thin. We can put you in the last row so you can have space. I'll clear it. He nodded again. He had lines along his cheeks like someone who worked in wind. She wanted the ocean, he said, barely above the hum of the vent. He opened the backpack slowly. Inside was a plastic folder with a notary stamp on a paper that said transport permit. There was a funeral program with a photo of a woman under a messy bun, eyes squinting against sun. A folded child's drawing. A person in a big round hat standing by waves, labeled with careful block letters. Abuela. There was a ziplock of shells, tiny and broken. There was a receipt from a creamery in a town 2 states away, and a bus ticket stub. She hated flying, he said, looking at the drawing. He smiled a little when he said it, a tired smile. I told her I'd do it once for her, even though she wasn't. He stopped. He didn't owe anyone the end of the sentence. Mara didn't say she was sorry. There was that word, and then there were the 20 other things people used when they didn't know what else to do. None of it fixed his pants, or the ash ground into a strip of rubber. She had a small brush in the bottom of her tote bag for crumbs in the reader. She took it out and very carefully lifted a line of grey from the groove in the urn lid seam, brushing it into a napkin cupped in her hand, then into the cup again. It wasn't much. It felt like something. Boarding will be reset, she said. We'll walk you through when you're ready. When he stood, he moved a little like he was dizzy, and then righted himself. He sipped the coffee, mouth twisting at the taste, and set it down on a windowsill. He adjusted the chain at his neck. They walked back toward B12. The line had melted and reformed into a different shape. The teenagers put their phones away. The woman in the grey blazer looked down. The officer who had twisted the lid earlier watched them come and stepped back, clearing a path without making a gesture about it. At the podium, Mara reprinted the boarding pass. Last row window, she said. I put a note for the crew. She slid over 2 drink coupons, the flimsy blue ones from the drawer. This was cheating. She didn't care. I don't drink, he said, almost smiling. Tea, then, she said, or nothing. It's just a thing. He put the folded drawing between the plastic pages of his folder so it wouldn't wrinkle. He touched the top of the urn with just the flat of his hand. Something relaxed in his shoulders that hadn't been able to loosen on the tile. Once the cabin lead waved, Mara scanned him through. She walked him down the jet bridge partway, because sometimes the jet bridge swayed, and people told her later it felt like walking on a pier. At the door, she caught the eyes of the flight attendant and tipped her head toward the urn. The attendant nodded once, like, yes, got it. Back at the podium, her manager stood with his arms crossed. He didn't say anything. He just held out his hand for her tablet. She handed it over. He rubbed his temple like there was a small stone there. Go home, he said. I'll call you. In the weeks after, small things changed. A sign appeared by the checkpoint table. If carrying cremated remains, please request private screening. It wasn't a big sign. It was laminated, 3 syllables too long, stuck with crooked tape. A soft brush showed up by each belt, the kind you'd use for a keyboard. No one said anything about where they came from. The officer with the red eyes started asking, "Do you want a hand with that?" When someone set a ceramic container down, he double-gloved without making a show of it. At the gate, the extra wax cups started going missing. Someone always replaced them. The podium drawers had a short stack of folded napkins now, even though napkins weren't in any checklist for equipment. Passenger assist got used twice in ways that hit the grey line, and both times Mara saw the supervisors look like they heard something besides the words. Mara got a suspension letter that smelled like printer toner. She lost a chance at a training course she'd asked for. They moved her to the early shift 3 days a week, the one that made your bones feel like a different person owned them. She bought a better brush for her tote and a roll of blue tape they didn't issue. Sometimes, on a slow morning, she watched the sun lay a bright stripe across the metal arch of the detector and the floor just past it. People walked through the light and out of it, carrying 100 quiet things. She kept the soft brush in her bag, the handle worn smooth by her thumb. When the automatic doors of B12 opened, a breeze came in from the tarmac and flicked the edge of her laminated badge. She thought about the strip of blue tape she'd smoothed over the lid. In the right light, the tape looked almost like water.